Have you ever met someone who just seemed like an old soul, even when they were a kid? That person who was always somehow the responsible one. Well, today we're going to dive deep into the psychology of what it means to grow up too fast. We're going to try and understand the experience of kids who had to become adults way before their time. This quote, wow, it really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? See, it's not always some big dramatic event. For so many, it's this slow, quiet process. It's a gradual realization that the space for just being a kid is getting smaller and smaller, while the space for being responsible just keeps growing, until one day, that's all that's left. It's that moment. It's often completely unspoken. It's when a child looks around the room and just understands on a gut level that if someone is going to be the adult here, it has to be them. This isn't a choice they make, it's a conclusion they're forced to arrive at. And that moment, that's the beginning of a huge shift in how they develop. There's actually a psychological term for this. It's called parentification. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when a child has to take on the emotional work of a parent. To cope with this, their brain literally adapts. It learns to push down its own needs, its own fears, its own desires, just to manage the situation and keep things from falling apart. And this right here, this is the core trade-off. They get incredibly good at solving problems, at staying calm when everything is chaotic, and it's seeming so mature for their age. But the silent lesson they learn right alongside that is a really deep one. My feelings, my needs, they have to wait. They always come second, or maybe even last. So all of this experience, from the outside, it builds what looks like incredible strength, right? But it's so important to understand that this independence wasn't a personality trait they were born with. Oh no, it was a skill they had to develop just to survive. And this survival independence, it shows up in some really specific ways. Kids in these situations, they learn fast that asking for help might not get them anywhere, or it might even make things worse. So they just stop asking. They learn that comfort isn't something they can count on, so they stop expecting it. They become absolute experts at handling everything themselves, even carrying burdens that no child should ever have to carry alone. And this leads to something that psychology calls split maturity. It's this huge disconnect. On the outside, what you see is a person who is hyper-capable, always composed, the one you can always count on. But on the inside, that's a totally different story. There's a deep struggle to trust other people, a constant confusion about what their own needs even are, and this profound sense of being emotionally unfulfilled because those parts of them just never got a chance to be nurtured. So let's just really let that sink in. This isn't about being born strong. It's about being conditioned into strength. It was the only path that was available to them. It was a reaction to an environment that demanded it, not some characteristic they just chose to have. Okay, so what are the long-term effects of all this? What are the hidden costs? These are the internal echoes that can reverberate for years, long into adulthood, affecting both your mind and even your body. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. Have you ever felt that? That deep, gnawing anxiety when you try to relax or just do nothing? For a lot of people who grew up too fast, rest doesn't feel like a relief. It actually feels like a threat. And there are very real psychological reasons for this. Think about it. In their childhood, moments of calm were often just the before, the quiet right before something went wrong. So their nervous system learned that calm is a warning sign. Their entire sense of self-worth got tangled up in being useful, in being needed. And as a result, their body just stays in the state of high alert, an adaptation that was protective back then but is completely exhausting now. This conditioning, it forges this incredibly powerful and often totally subconscious belief. The very act of receiving care gets twisted into the act of creating a burden for somebody else. And this makes it so hard to ask for help, to accept support, or to just let yourself be cared for without feeling this immense wave of guilt. And this all leads to a really fascinating paradox. On the one hand, their emotional awareness is just razor sharp. I mean, they can read a room, sense a tiny shift in mood, and see problems coming a mile away. But on the other hand, they are intensely guarded, because they know exactly how much it costs to care, how risky it is to be vulnerable. So they build these walls to protect themselves, which creates distance even as they're seeing everything with perfect clarity. So understanding your past, that is a massive first step. But the next step is about learning how to heal from it. This final section is all about reframing that experience and learning, maybe for the first time, how to finally rest. If any of this has been resonating with you, I really want you to just let this sink in for a second. You are not broken. What you are is a survivor. What you are is highly adapted. This is such a critical reframe. It moves the whole conversation away from thinking about flaws and toward understanding function. Your nervous system did exactly what it was designed to do. It adapted to keep you safe in a really high-pressure environment. That's a testament to your resilience, not some kind of defect. So the path forward, it isn't about trying to erase that strength. It's about adding to it. You learned responsibility long before you ever felt fully safe. You learned how to be strong long before you were ever allowed to be soft. Healing is the process of learning, right now, as an adult, that you can be safe, that you are allowed to be soft. And when it all comes down to it, it comes back to this. Healing is about teaching that hyper-vigilant part of your nervous system that the war is over. It's about giving yourself the permission that maybe no one else ever could, the permission to finally, truly rest. So, I'll leave you with this final thought, a question to just reflect on. If you grow up responsible for way more than any child ever should be, maybe just take a moment and ask yourself, are you still carrying all of that weight today?